Your firm has really cool, interesting data. I read the reports and said, wow, there's a lot to unpack there. But before we get into really great data sets, I love to know, how are your customers thinking about making EV investments today, both in terms of fleets and private ownership? Since it's two different sides of the market, but they're working together.
Yeah, I think on the fleet side, it's in the market in 2025, we've got some back and forth kind of financial incentives and disincentives and different focus from the government. So we've definitely seen a little bit on the fleet side in terms of people realizing they don't need to do what they thought they had to do for compliance, at least with the state of California. On the other hand, my coworkers and other parts of the company are definitely supporting fleets really all around the country who are trying to move forwards with electric vehicles. Some of them are for compliance, some of them are for just sustainability goals, some of them are, just think it's the right thing to do economically. So that's kind of all over the place. And, we're helping people look at what parts of their fleets are the easiest or the hardest or the shortest term or whatever to kind of make that jump, whether it's, I think light duty vehicles at this point, 15 years in is kind of a little more straightforward for most people. On the kind of light duty residential side though, I think it's kind of like the new in some cases. People are hopeful they're going to save some money. There's a little bit of a sustainability thing going on there. In terms of like the market adoption curve, we're past the early adopters. We're definitely somewhere in the middle, if not the third phase of that adoption curve. So EVs, not everybody's driven one, not everybody's interested in one, but everybody's kind of heard about it. And, we've seen multiple generations. So it's just kind of something that a lot of people seem open to and interested in, and especially with some of the big brand name charging networks, it makes it so easy to charge, if not road trip. So yeah, I think it's just becoming more and more common for people to think about it as their next car or the next toy car for a 2-year lease or something like that. Part of my interest is trying to help people find confidence and security and convenience with it so that they choose to keep it beyond their lease or keep it for a long term or keep staying in the EV market and don't go back to a conventional car, or at least put as many miles on their electric car or plug-in hybrid car as possible. So
You hit the nail on the head. Convenience. I own an electric vehicle, and I had to go to a gas station to put air in the tires. I felt like this is the most antiquated thing in the world. I said, "Holy God, I don't miss this place." But it just hit me because you're so used to the convenience of the EV. There's no oil change, and those get expensive. And it's just, you can charge at home or you can charge on the go. And when you get used to that overall, I'm on my second EV. My first one was a disaster. My second one is amazing because the infrastructure is much better. But it's like, okay, this is so convenient. Why would I want to go back to something inconvenient? Do you see any of that in your trade, both from a fleet perspective, because the maintenance is cheaper from a fleet, and from a personal ownership, you have the convenience? Is that once we get used to it, whoa, this is great? Is that trend continuing, or am I just an outlier in that?
I think they're just such different markets. I mean, the residential passenger vehicle side is just so much about being able to make their own decisions and not having to necessarily justify it. So I think that convenience side is so super important on the residential side, and that's one of the biggest challenges. Is such a large proportion of the U.S. population lives in apartments or condos and doesn't have their own place to charge or a convenient place to charge. And so some people will try it, and because of that lack of convenience, it may not work out for them. They may not be able to keep it. And so what we're seeing is like workplace charging is super important. That's what a lot of the industry has been touting for the last 10 to 20 years is workplace charging really makes up for residential charging. You go there, at least we used to go to work 5 days a week and spend a lot of time there, a lot of dwell time. That's what a lot of, from my perspective, a lot of the EV charging comes down to is dwell time. What's your opportunity to charge your vehicle? So on the residential side, especially if you have a house or a dedicated parking space where you can get electricity to it, you're doing pretty good. I think there's a lot of arbitrage in terms of what's the right cost, and with some of the work I'm doing now, and with my coworkers and my team, we're kind of digging into, at least in terms of public charging, what's the range of costs? How many charging stations have low costs, high costs, medium costs? How frequently is that happening, and how's it compared to the cost of gasoline? So at some point, that's kind of the reckoning: is how convenient is it, how economical is it, and that economical side has a lot to do with fleet. On the other hand, even fleets have to think about how well do their employees, how well do their drivers accept the vehicles, and that definitely seems to be another challenge, is getting people who drive for a living to accept EVs and trust them. So there's a lot of similar but just different concepts going into either market, especially when you start getting into commercial sized vehicles.
And that's a very valid point. The range of cost, does that, what goes into that? And does the price of land factor in? If you look at an industrial yard might have a cheaper piece of land versus something in a prime downtown area, does that get factored into the cost to charge, or what really goes into that whole equation?
That's a really good question. I wish I was a little closer to that. I think some of the research we're doing and reporting we're doing in this 562 pages of goodness kind of gets at what that range of cost is and frequency of any particular cost is. From what we've seen, it's I'm not seeing patterns, at least on the public side, in terms of the cost of installing charging and the location of charging impacting what rates these operators make available to the general public. So that's hard to say. I would definitely say, we start looking at the industrial side or the commercial side. There's larger parking lots that might add cost because you got to get a further distance away from where the electricity is to where the chargers are. On the other hand, a lot of those larger lots are asphalt or dirt, softscape, that makes it a lot lower cost to do the projects. So overall, I get the feeling we're seeing a lot of kind of random pricing. We see a lot of the same operators, the same network service providers, for instance, running these charging stations, but in which case we'll see, they'll have a kind of a common pricing structure taking place, but I'm not really seeing any specific patterns associated with, pricing here versus pricing there. And there's a couple of high priced ones, 60, 70 cents a kilowatt hour, which is definitely getting high. There's a couple of low ones in the 30 cents. We've seen a couple of maybe semi-private or private locations that are providing free charging just because they like the benefits. But so far, I'm not necessarily seeing the connection between the cost of building compared to the cost of operating these things.